Alright, welcome once again to Henry's Impact International Academy, and today we're going to be treating the sixth part of our topic 2 from the JAMB curriculum. Alright, good, and that's where we're going to be discussing the first primitive members of the plant kingdoms, which are the THALLOPHYTAs. So we have the THALLOPHYTAs, and we are going to be discussing them extensively, including their life cycle. Okay, good. Now, I want us to pick this up. When we hear the word THALLOPHYTA, it's simply organisms that have a thallus-like body. And when we say thallus-like body, just like what I said during the fungi lecture, a thallus-like body is simply a body that is undifferentiated. So a thallus-like body here, that thallus word here, simply means a body that is undifferentiated. So literally, that pinpoints the first thing that I want you to know about the THALLOPHYTAs. Because when we say they have an undifferentiated body, that's as good as saying that these guys have no true roots. They have no true roots, stem, or leaf. Do you get that now? So they do not have any true root, stem, or leaf. That's one first thing I wanted to quickly pinpoint about them. Another thing again there is that they are aquatic. They are majorly aquatic. You understand? They are majorly aquatic. You understand? And some of them that you don't find in water bodies, you find them in moist environment. So when you look at environments that are moist, that have a particular quantity of water, there you find the THALLOPHYTAs there as well. And good. Now, one thing again I wanted to quickly pinpoint about the THALLOPHYTAs here is that these guys literally comprise of algae and fungi. Yeah, I know that fungi, we discussed fungi as a class on its own, as a kingdom on its own, but in many classifications, fungi are also considered thallophytes. Are you there now? They're usually considered thallophytes. Now, for the algae parts of the thallophytes, you see the presence of pigments. They have pigments, and this pigment allows them to photosynthesize. They have pigments that enables them to photosynthesize. But for the fungi divisions, they lack pigments. That's they lack chlorophyll. So they don't have photosynthetic pigments, so they lack chlorophyll. That's for the fungi part of it. So thallophytes are simply algae and fungi basically. Alright, good. Now, the algae part of your thallophytes. The algae part of your thallophytes can be divided into 3 major classes, which you might be asked. You understand? So, what are the 3 major classes of the algae that I want you to know? I want you to know the green algae, I want you to know the brown algae and the red algae. Yes. So, we have the green algae, which we refer to as the Chlorophyceae. We have the brown algae, which are the Phaeophyceae, or you can call it the Phaeophytas. And then we also have the red algae that we call the Rhodophyceae. Now, let me just put it in front here so you can remember. This is for green, the Phaeco is for brown, and the Rhodo is for red. Good. Are we there now? So it is under this that you'll be able to answer questions in JAMB where they ask which of the following is a brown fungi and brown algae. Are you getting me now? So this one is green algae, brown algae, and red algae. So there are some major examples of each of them I want you to note. Good. For the Chlorophyceae, I want you to remember this member that we'll call this an example that we'll call Spirogyra. So Spirogyra is an example of a Chlorophysae. Are you there now? Another example of this Chlorophysae that we have is Chlamydomonas. Chlamydomonas. So we have Chlamydomonas, we also have Spirogyra. These are members of the Chlorophysae. We have another major member again that's come out before in past question. We call it the Chara. Are we there now? So good. Then in your Phaeophysae, which is your brown fungi, I want you to just take note of one major example that we call the fucus. So the fucus is an example of a brown fungi. It has come out in past question. If you are conversant with your past question, you'd have seen some of these terminologies and these names. Are you getting these examples? Then in your Rhodophysae, that's the red algae, just take note of your Gracilaria. So both the Gracilaria or the Irish moss are examples of the Rhodophysae. So meaning that all these guys here are examples of algae. Are you there now? So other examples of algae that we have that I might just want you to put in mind, other examples. I want you to know that Ulutrix, if you see the word Ulutrix is another example of an algae. If you see Cladophora is another example of algae. If you see Volvox is another example of your algae. Are you there now? So all these guys are algae. So I want you to have them in mind and keep that stock in your long-term memory, because you might be seeing these things reflecting or popping out in your exams. So good. Now we've talked about indirectly, we talked about the nutrition in algae. All you need to know is that they do photosynthetic through pigmentations. You understand? They are able to synthesize their food by themselves. Good. Now we will now look at another division of the another criteria of discourse when you are dealing with the Thallophytas, and that's when we want to talk about their life cycle. So we know that when discussing their life cycle, there is no way we discuss the life cycle of the Thallophyte that we will not want to appreciate their mode of reproduction. So before we start discussing the whole cycle, I want you to quickly note that these guys reproduce by sexual and asexual means. So reproduction can be sexual or asexual. So if we want to appreciate the asexual means of reproduction, then we are going to be talking about fragmentation and spore formation. So the algae or the Thallophytas reproduce asexually by fragmentation, where part of their body breaks off and each of them have regenerative ability to go into a new algae. Are you there now? That's fragmentation. Then spore formation is where they produce spores that are able to grow into new parent organisms. Are you getting now? New organisms generally. So yeah, for the asexual, we're talking about fragmentation, and then you also have by spore formation. So they utilize spores. You get that now? Then in sexual, we have three major means that they exhibit during sexual reproduction. You know, sexual simply means there is fusion of gametes, right? Okay, so good. Yeah, we have three major means. We have by isogamy. Are you there now? In isogamy, what's happening? You have two identical gametes. So you have two gametes, gamete A and gamete B, that are fusing together. And when you see these two gametes, they are exactly alike. So whenever two identical gametes fuse together to form a zygote, that kind of sexual reproduction is isogamy. That means an isogamic process. So good. So we have isogamy, we have anisogamy. So in anisogamy, what's happening there? In anisogamy, there is a difference between the two gametes in size. So one gamete is very big while the other one is usually very small. But there's something I want to pick up from here. In this case here, both are usually motile. Both are usually motile. Are you there now? So in this case here, both are motile. In this case here, still same, usually also motile. You have them usually motile. Good, it's just that there is a difference in size, and that's an isogamy. So isogamy, you have identical motile gametes. Are you then now fusing together? In this case here, you have identical, non-identical, because now there's a difference in size. That's an isogamy. Non-identical. Do you get that now? So that's an isogamy for you. So on the last one, you now have oogamy. Oogamy. So in oogamy, now that's even the one that happens with humans. So in oogamy, you have a very one very large, either now non-motile. So you have one very large non-motile gamete that will actually fuse with or fuse to a second gamete that is usually motile. And if you look at what happens with humans, our sperm is usually the smaller one that is motile, and we have the non-motile large female egg, right? So that's oogamy. So the three sexual means that thallophytas can exhibit is either isogamy and oogamy. Usually you will see isogamy happening in Chlamydomonas. You will see it happening in Spirogyra. You will see it happening in Spirogyra and Chlamydomonas. Yes. You will see this anisogamy. It usually happens in Chlamydomonas as well. You will see it happening in Chlamydomonas as well. Chlamydomonas. And there's even a species that we call Eudorina. So it also happens in Eudorina. Yeah. So oogamy presents itself. You usually observe oogamy for thallophytes. You see it happening in the brown algae fucus. You also see it in volvox, because volvox, when you see the structure of volvox, they have structures that can actually enable them exhibit motile movement. You understand? I said motile movement, exhibit mobility. You understand? So making the gamete motile. Now, when we say the word motile simply means move. You understand that? In case you are not conversant with that already. So when you hear that something is motile, it means it moves. So we're trying to tell you that these guys here actually have the ability to produce motile gametes. Okay, so that's that for that. Now let's now use this knowledge to discuss the life cycle that thallophyte presents with. Now for you to understand this, even to understand other concepts we'll be discussing, like in other parts of the divisions of plants where we're dealing with life cycle, I want you to get something now. We have three major type of life cycle that is exhibited in the plant kingdom. What are they? We have the haplontic life cycle. We have the diplotic life cycle. Yeah, they are both alternation of generation. When we say alternation of generation, that means they are alternating between two possible forms. And the two forms that we deal with here in plant kingdom is sporophytic form and gametophytic form. So we have sporophyte stage and gametophyte stage. Good. So in one life cycle, they usually alternate between those two stages. So haplontic life cycle, diplotic life cycle, and we have the haplodiplotic. The haplodiplotic life cycle. Yes, these first two are false alternation of generation. False alternation of generation is still alternation of generation, but it's not true alternation of generation, because it's the haplodiplotic life cycle that is the true alternation of generation. That's tag. Are we there now? So good. In our lower plants like thallophytes, in all our thallophytes, they majorly take part in haplontic life cycle, and I will explain what that is now. They usually take part in haplontic life cycle. So in haplontic life cycle, what's happening there is that the haploid stage, which is usually the gametophyte, is the dominant independent stage. Let me repeat it again. When you say haplontic, it's come from the word haploid. And when we hear haploid, haploid is for gametophyte. So in haplontic stage, what is dominant is the haploid stage, which is the gametophyte. So gametophyte is dominant. Idea now, it expresses itself more through the lifespan, and then you have that gametophyte to be independent. The gametophyte does not depend on the sporophyte. You know, I told you that the two phases you have. So in haplontic stage, you have gametophyte, which is the haploid phase that is dominant and independent over the sporophyte. Good. In diplontic, which is not what we're discussing now, because we're discussing thallophyte, and I told you thallophyte exhibits haplontic majorly. Only few of them do diplontic. So in the diplontic, what's not happening there is the opposite. We have the sporophyte stage as the dominant one. Now the sporophyte is diploid. I told you gametophyte is haploid. Here now, in diplontic life cycle, you have the diploid sporophyte as the dominant and independent phase. Are you there now? Good. Then in the haploid diplontic, we have them both haploid and diploid to be expressing themselves almost at equal level during the whole life cycle. And this one here, we're not discussing this one now. So we're going to be looking at this haplontic life cycle. That's what we're going to be looking at now. So, how is the life cycle? How is the haplontic life cycle like? Since that's what happened in thallophyte, precisely our algae. So yeah, we are going to commence from the organism itself, a parent organism. And that parent organism, since we said that in this phase is usually the gametophyte that is the major, so we're going to say we're starting from the gametophyte. So we have the gametophyte of a thallophyte now, maybe an algae, it can be chara, it can be hydrorhina, it can be gracilla, any of the members. So we have a gametophyte. So what happens there is that the gametophyte, whether male gametophyte or female gametophyte, idea now, the gametophyte will produce something. And what that thing is going to produce? It's going to produce gametes. It's going to produce gametes. Now, I need you to know what I tell you about gametophytes. I told you that they're haploid, right? Good. You need to know this. That when we hear the word haploid, the chromosomal number of an haploid cell is represented as N. But when you hear diploid is represented as 2N. Good. Having known this, there's one other thing I need to know. These are like concepts that will help you understand. Whenever you hear mitosis, I'm not giving you a definition of mitosis now. I'm just giving you a clue to understand what you should expect when you hear mitosis. When you hear mitosis is simply replicate, identical. So if I have an individual that is N and I say mitosis happened to this individual that is N, what offspring will it give us? It will give us N, because I said mitosis replicates. If the parent was 2N and mitosis happened, it will give you what? 2N. Do you get that now? But when you talk meiosis must always half. Must give you an offspring that is half of the initial, that is of the parent. So if you have a diploid parent, and I tell you that meiosis occurred on this diploid parent, what should be the offspring, the result? That will be what? Ordinary N, that's half of it. Do you get that now? Good. So this is what I want you to pick and take note of now. When you move from 2N to half, that is meiosis. When you move from N to N or 2N to 2N, that is identical, that is mitosis. Now, the gametophyte usually, I told you, is haploid, so it has a chromosomal number of N. It is haploid. Good. Now, what happens there in the life cycle is that the gametophyte will release their gametes, and we all know. We should know now that these gametes that are released, are released via the aid of mitosis. I need you to take note of that now. They are released via the aid of mitosis. So mitosis happens here. So if you are following me, that mitosis that happens here will generate what? A gamete that should be what? Since the initial was N, what am I expecting in the gamete? It will giving you a gamete that is what? A gamete that is N. So we have N gametes. So good. I want you to understand something. This gamete here, we have to have two different gametes, the male and female gametes, right? So I'll just do something like this here now. I'll just do something like this here to just make you understand. We have male and female gametes. So this one here and also this one here. So what does that indicate? Male gametes, and we also have the female gametes. Yeah, so the male gamete here, you know, it's N, female gamete also is N. So when they fuse, N plus N gives you what? N plus N will give you what? 2N, right? So when they fuse together, that is fertilization has happened. So fertilization has happened now. So I'll just put it here, fertilization. So via the aid of fertilization, you form a zygote. So by looking at this, what should be the gene number of this zygote? Since N and N has fused together, so we are expecting what? 2N. So we have a zygote that is 2N. What kind of zygote is this? This is a diploid zygote. This is diploid. So this is diploid here. The next thing that is going to happen is mitosis. So we have mitosis. And what mitosis is going to be doing? Mitosis is always going to generate what? Identical number, right? So it simply means that we're going to be having the zygote. From the zygote stage, it will develop and mature via mitosis into what we call the sporophyte itself. So here now, I will now have the sporophyte. So this is where you have the sporophyte. Good. Now this sporophyte here should be what chromosomal number or genetic is going to be 2N. Why? How do we know? Because we said the zygote was 2N, the mitosis happened, so it's going to produce identical. So from there now, this sporophyte will start producing spores via meiosis. So you get that now? So if I write meiosis here, that will produce spores via meiosis, we are going to be expecting spores that are what? Is it diploid or haploid? We are going to be expecting haploid spores. So we have spores now, and the spores chromosomal number should be what? N, because it's meiosis, and I told you meiosis will always have the initial. So here we are going to be having N. These spores then will be the ones to grow and develop later on into the gametophyte again. So that is how this thing happens. This is the life cycle of typical thallophyte. And from what we can see here, it is what? It is haplontic. Why? Because we spent more time of the life cycle in the haploid stage. You can see from the spores N to the gametophyte N to gamete N. Are you there now? So it all was there like that. Haploid. You just have your sporophytic stage here. This is where you have sporophytic stage. Zygote 2N into sporophyte. So I need you to note something, right? I need you to note something here. Yes, from here, where the spores, how the spores move from spores to gametophyte? Is it meiosis or mitosis? Is what? Mitosis. Because you can see it's NN. Good. Mitosis. Identical. Good. Now, it's important for you to note that the sporophytes are usually generated from the zygote via mitosis. Are you here? The sporophytes are generated from the zygote via mitosis. Do you get that now? But the gametophyte also is generated from the spores via mitosis. So you get sporophyte from zygote and get gametophyte from spores. Do you get that now? So lastly, before we move on, you see the syllabus says that we should talk about spirogyra. You see, I told you all the organisms I'm mentioning here, you have to be able to identify the spirogyra. Now, this diagram here, since we are done with the concept, this diagram here is the diagram of your spirogyra. So we want to appreciate what some of these parts here are. So good. First thing first, all these strands that are like this, all these strands that are used in blue, they are the chloroplasts. That's the chloroplasts. Are we there now? So that's the chloroplast. We have the chloroplast. We have this thing here, chloroplast, all the blue lining. But these green stuffs, the green dots or pigment, the green stuffs inside the chloroplast, we'll call it the pyrenoid. Pyrenoid. So we know chloroplast contains chlorophyll for synthesis, but the pyrenoid there is for storage of starch and for carbohydrate metabolism. Very important. Let me write that here. Is for storage of starch, and sometimes JAMB we use the word carbohydrates metabolism. Carbohydrate metabolism. Good. Now when you look inside here, let me just shade it out so that it can be more conspicuous. Inside here, this stuff that is inside here, are you there now? This part, this portion that is here, that's what we call the cytoplasmic strand. It's called the cytoplasmic strand. So all this thing like this is called cytoplasmic strand. Cytoplasmic strand. So what did they do? They help to anchor or hold firm the what? The nucleus, because this guy here that is central is the nucleus. So they help to hold firm the nucleus within the vacuole. Now, all these empty spaces around here are the vacuoles. So it's holding firm the nucleus. The cytoplasmic strand is holding firm the nucleus within the vacuole. So let me label that out here. So we have the vacuole. Alright, good. So one other thing I want us to identify here is this outermost sheet. The outermost sheet that I used green. That outermost sheet is called the mucilaginous sheet. The mucilaginous sheet. And what is it for? The mucilaginous sheet, which is the outermost part, it helps the fungi to arrange themselves in filaments. That's attachment of fungi to fungi. I said fungi, algae to algae. It helps the spirogyra to attach themselves to each other. That's in the filamentous chain continuous form. Also, it aids in protection. It actually aids in protection. It protects them against desiccation, against dryness. You get it now, so you have to note that. So the mucilaginous sheet, it protects against desiccation, or what we call dryness. So we don't want them to dry out. It also protects them against what do they call it? Against environmental harmful substances. You understand? It's a protective layer. Good. So deep to that layer, that's the next layer you see is the cell wall. And also the next layer you see after the cell wall, which is this second one here, more inside. I'll just label it to this direction. That one there is the cell membrane. It's the cell membrane. So there we have it. That is the spirogyra. So I just need you to remember what the mucilaginous sheet is for. It's for what? It's for protection. It's for anchorage. Idea now where they want to fix themselves, that spirogyra want to fix themselves to each other to form what they call it, continuous filamentous chain. Idea now, and I also said it's for protection against drying out, so that the spirogyra won't dry out. Good. Then we made mention of the pyrenoid for storage of starch and carbohydrate metabolism, as well as the chloroplast. Idea now, the chloroplast which contain chlorophyll for synthesis of food. So that's all on our THALLOPHYTAs. We've been able to cover everything according to what the syllabus presents, so you don't have to worry. With our lectures, you are 100% covered, and I can assure you, you are getting the vast amount of information necessary to pass the O-level JAMB examination, as well as WAEC and other O-levels. Alright, good. If you have not subscribed to our channel yet, do wait to subscribe to our channel, and also click on the notification bell below so that whenever we drop content like this, you'll get notified.